That story is, absolutely. That story is called From One Question to 5 Million Copies Sold. What you can learn from our bodies ourselves about the transformation of your organization or a business. And it starts with a burning question. Now, as I say what my burning question is, I want you to reflect on what your burning question is. Now, a burning question I define as something that helps us get to our purpose and decide on some actions to take that will fulfill that purpose. A burning question wakes you up in the morning, wakes you up at night, and just has a life of its own. So I'll start with my burning question and the history of my burning question. I'm 71 years old today. No, it's not. I'm 71 years old this year. A month ago, I turned 71. And this question started 48 years. This question arose 48 years ago, before some of you in this room were even born. It was 1966, and I was in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and I was paying a 6-week follow-up visit to my OBGYN's office after the birth of my first son. And we were discussing birth control at the time, and he recommended a new-to-market, high-dosage estrogen birth control pill. That's as much as I knew about it. And I said to him, "What's in the pill?" And he said to me, and these were his words, dear, patting me on the head, "Don't worry your pretty little head. You don't have to worry about that." Well, at first, I was embarrassed that my question wasn't answered. Next, what came up was anger, and then finally outrage. Outrage that fueled the question and fueled the women's movement and the creation of our bodies ourselves. So let me tell you the history of my journey with our bodies ourselves, to our bodies ourselves, or with my burning question. First, I'll put it in a context. The context is the 1960s. The civil rights movement is alive and well. The anti-war movement is alive and well. We've lost some of our most important and inspiring leaders, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, Robert Fitzgerald Kennedy, and Martin Luther King Jr. I'm living in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and moved to Cambridge, Massachusetts during the 60s. The other thing that, in terms of my history, I grew up in an activist family. My parents were activists. Social justice was the religion of the family. And I grew up singing the folk songs of Pete Seeger and Woody Guthrie, the Weavers, and Odetta. My mother was also a feminist, an early feminist, and encouraged me to get a professional degree, the kind of degree that she wasn't able to get because of the Great Depression. And some of the inequities that existed then still exist now. I just want to acknowledge that. So my journey continues to the creation of the women's movement after the birth of my second child. So picture this. Here's the story. I'm sitting in my living room. It's April of 1969, to give you a date. I'm sitting in my living room in Cambridge, Massachusetts, in a butterfly chair. It's early in the morning. It's early in the morning, and I am exhausted. And my daughter is asleep in my arm, finally, 3-week-old daughter. And I look at her, and I think, I have been signed up to help organize the first women's conference in Boston. And how in the hell did I sign up to do that with a 3-week-old child? And then I thought about my burning question. And I thought about the burning questions of my women friends. and the fact that many of them had had unnecessary cesareans or didn't have access to abortions when that was the choice they wanted to make. And I thought, this is why I'm doing it, for my friends. And I look at my daughter and sleep in my arm, and I said, I'm doing it for you, honey. So let's see where I move next. So what happens after the conference? The conference is May 4th. I'll take you to the exact date, May 4th, 1969. The conference is held at Emmanuel College, a Catholic girls' college. I still, to this day, don't know. I tried to do research for our 2011 celebration about how we actually got into a Catholic girls' college. But I wasn't able to get the information. But anyway, it's May 4th, 1969, and I'm in front of a packed room like this, a little closer together. And I'm offering a workshop for the first time called Control of Their Bodies. That also speaks the language of the distance we felt. You know, our body is our first and most important system. It's the distance we felt from that system. So control of our bodies. After the workshop, women just stood around and we kept talking. The conversation was not going to stop. We needed to continue. So from June of 1969 to December of 1970, there was a huge amount of activity. To give you the flavor of it, we gathered together in each other's homes. We picked topics that related to women's health and sexuality that personally moved and inspired us. We did research on topics. We learned how to get access to Cantway Medical Library at Harvard. None of us were medically trained. We put those information together in papers. And I, as a faculty wife, my husband at that point was teaching at MIT, I had access to space at MIT. And we met for the first time, the first course, and the first conversation about sexuality was held in a lounge at MIT. I'm not sure MIT knew it. So we met in a lounge at MIT. And the vision was that women would take the information, if it was important to them, and take it back to their temple, their church, their community center, and the information would spread that way, through the network. And it did. And women, we mimeographed papers. I don't know, some of you remember mimeograph machines. We mimeographed papers. And women kept saying, we need a book, we need a book. And so we eventually raised the money. It was $1,500. I remember the amount of money. And we raised the money and printed the copy of the book. And I have a copy here that Fiona's going to hold up for me, which people can look at. This is actually the second printing. And the reason I know it's the second printing is because it says 30 cents. And the first printing was 75 cents. And we wanted more women to have access, so we lowered the price. This was December of 1970 that this book was published. Over the next 2 years, by word of mouth, we sold 250,000 copies of this book. 250,000. And, you know, every woman has a body and knowledge is power. That's what I thought at the time. And I said to my friends and colleagues, we're going to sell 1 million copies. And people laughed at me. And I said, okay, you can laugh. It's all right. In fact, we signed a contract in '72 with Simon & Schuster. We were courted then by New York publishers. It was kind of fun. And we signed a contract with Simon & Schuster and eventually sold many millions of copies. Now, the fact of the matter is, you might be interested to hear a little bit about how So the burning question was still there. Because we came together, and as a group of women who put this book together, we didn't know each other. We were similarly committed to our own burning questions. And we came together, and this has been my experience in groups coming together since then. We came together because we had a passion for the project. And through the passion for the project, we got to know one another. We got to know one another, and now, all these years, 40-something years later, we are like extended family to one another. And we, at the time, were a committed, and still are, a committed, consistent group with a lot of will, Frances, and a lot of commitment, Jennifer, to the whole of ourselves. And stayed with the process. And what unfolded was generating a paradigm shift that altered the global conversation about women's sexuality and reproductive health. We didn't start out to do that, but that's what occurred. In the context also of the times and the women's movement and the women's health movement growing and developing. Those were heady times. And the other thing, we paid a lot of attention to systems. We were obviously paying attention to our body as a system and really understood that. We were also looking at the medical system. And it's very interesting. I asked one of the military people in the hall about what their conference was. And this person told me, well, it was all the doctors, the senior doctors in their branch of the military that are coming together for leadership training. It totally tickled me, because one of the things we realized is in our analysis of the medical system, there were no women doctors. And that group out there is probably half female. And I thought, this is the sign of the times. And there was certainly no woman doctor visible to us at the time that we were putting the book together. The other thing is we looked at the larger social, political, economic system that served profit and not people. And the thing that was unique about our book, and still continues to be unique, is the combination of the personal experiences, the accurate, scientific-based information, and a political analysis that allows people to see the whole system in which we're, the series of systems that are operating all together, sometimes in harmony, sometimes not in harmony, but they're always operating. And I want to come back to the issue of will that Frances brought, because we had the will to continue to be part of building an international women's movement and an international movement. And one of the things that in the 43 years since the first publication of the book, we have 31 different language or formatted editions of Our Bodies, Ourselves. And the newest ones that are about to come out, I was telling Cynthia about it at dinner last night, is one in Vietnamese and one in Farsi. There are Iranian women in this country that are translating our book into Farsi for Iranian women in Iran. Let's see. What else I have to say? Thank you, Heidi. Thank you very much. Here is another story that is very moving and inspiring. Imagine you're sitting in Jerusalem, and you're a fly on the wall of a meeting of women, half Palestinian and half Hebrew women. They're part of a group that they formed over the last 3 years called Our Bodies, Ourselves. And they came together to translate the book simultaneously into Hebrew and into Arabic. And they've been working on this project together, and one of the matters that they're dealing with is language. Because in Arabic, there's no language for women's genitals except down there. And that was not going to suffice for this situation. So they figured out new language. The Hebrew edition got published, no problem. The Arabic edition, they could not, in Palestine, find a publisher who was willing to publish the book. So the women came together, and what they figured out was this. The Israeli women said, we'll raise the money and we're going to publish the book because we're committed to them coming out simultaneously. So in 2011, at the 40th anniversary celebration in Boston of Our Bodies, Ourselves, 2 women came representing the group with an Israeli edition and an Arabic edition in hand. And if we have any doubt about who's going to be behind peace in the Middle East, it's going to be the women. Now I want to come back to the burning question. I want to come back and give you, come back to my burning question, what's in the pill, and I'll share with you in a moment what my burning question is today. But I want to take a few moments and for you to turn to the person next to you. And we're not going to have extensive conversation now. We can have more of it later. But I want you to name your burning question to that person. Take a minute. Take 30 seconds each. I'm out of time. I got one more, and wrap this up. I'll wrap. Okay, we need to come back together because I need to wrap this up because I'm committed to Fiona having her time. So I want to bring you. No, it isn't okay. So I'm just going to say very quickly, my burning question at this point, from my perspective, being an executive business coach, consultant, and author researcher, is how do we bring our whole selves to the whole of our lives? How do we bring our whole selves to the whole of our lives? And going forward, I invite you to join me. Will you join me? Will you join me in creating a sustainable world for ourselves, our children, and the future generations going forward? And I leave you with a message from Joanna Macy. Some of you may know her as a deep ecologist, a Buddhist, and a poet. And I was at a conference with her in California many years ago, and this stuff, it changed my perception of time. She did. When she said, we are only responsible for starting something. She said, it may take 900 years, but we have to ask the questions and we have to get started. So if you haven't started on your burning question, get started. Yay!